Have aliens ever crossed your mind? Have you ever considered that we might not be alone? What if Earth is only one of many planets in the cosmos and intelligent life exists somewhere else? How are we expected to know before you write this off as a ridiculous question? I strongly advise you to view this film as it may alter your viewpoint from previous years. NASA has made significant investments in the study of extraterrestrial life. It has constructed scientific laboratories on the Moon, launched thousands of satellites into orbit, and written thousands of groundbreaking papers on what it might be like to find alien life, music. For those who are prepared for some astounding facts regarding extraterrestrials, watch this video. The fifth one will undoubtedly surprise you. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more films like this one. TESS has only been in orbit for a few days, but throughout the past few years, scientists have already discovered potential habitats for life. Scientists have identified 10 new planets that orbit within the habitable zone of their stars, which is the range of distances where liquid water might exist on the surface. NASA's Kepler telescope has found thousands of worlds that are roughly the size of Earth. By using artificial intelligence and machine learning to analyze their brightness, scientists were able to determine which ones had atmospheres, music. The TESS Telescope, NASA's Kepler spacecraft, has been replaced by the Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite TESS Telescope. Ground-based and space-based observatories to look for planets outside of our solar system, as well as to evaluate searches for exoplanets in the solar neighborhood, particularly those orbiting bright nearby stars that are known to host transiting planets. The TESS mission's main objective is to find tiny planets in the solar neighborhood with bright host stars so that the planets and their atmospheres may be thoroughly characterized. The telescope searches the entire sky in both the northern and southern hemispheres for minuscule worlds that orbit stars other than our sun. It is the result of decades of study and billions of dollars. Launched on March 20th, it started working right away. Of the 10,000 candidates it has found so far, some are planets warmer than Mercury. They are located in the Goldilocks zone, where liquid water can exist on their surfaces. The temperature of a planet's atmosphere must not be too cold in that zone. HD 209458b is one of the planets that TESS discovered. The planet orbits a star that is smaller and colder than our Sun, and it is located 169 light-years away. The planet is thought to be a super-Earth with an atmosphere that contains carbon dioxide and water vapor. What does the term habitable zone signify to scientists? The most basic requirement is that a planet have water vapor in its air. If there is an aqueous water-containing component, it is assumed that it would be liquid or solid water. At the lower end of the habitable zone, temperature also has a significant impact on water. These are the factors that are taken into consideration when determining whether an atmosphere is habitable. Water vapor condenses into liquid droplets at temperatures below 100 Kelvin or 60 degrees Fahrenheit above absolute zero. On Earth, at temperatures far higher than this range, ice would form at the second highest gas temperature. The temperature of the atmosphere's gas composition should also be taken into account. A temperature of over 35 Kelvin or minus 186 degrees Fahrenheit contains more gases that are more likely to absorb heat and not release it as readily as oxygen and nitrogen do on Earth, and the upper limit for water vapor is around 100 Kelvin or 60 degrees Fahrenheit, which is still well below absolute zero. Music. Number 3. Software content. At temperatures above 100 Kelvin and 60 degrees Fahrenheit, water vapor condenses into liquid drops at the top end of the habitable zone, forming ice. However, at very high temperatures, the sulfur content of the planet's atmosphere becomes considerable. Superplanetary scientists have considered the following factors. Earth's and a ring world without an atmosphere must be rocky planets with too much gas to be Neptune-like, too little gas to be Jupiter-like, and if there are rings surrounding the planet, astronomers infer that there is very little in their atmosphere. Rings don't tend to form around gaseous worlds, so even though it may be too soon to predict which specific planet TESS will find a habitable atmosphere, the fact that this was even possible shows the power of all sky surveys like TESS. Following list of habitable planets and their features is illustrated in this movie. Number 1, Kepler 7b, is a planet that orbits its star in a relatively tight orbit. which puts it closer to the star than it would be for liquid water to be. Stable, but not so close that water could exist on its surface. Additionally, Kepler 7b is much closer to the star than Neptune is to the Sun. Neptune is about 30 times farther away from the Sun than Kepler b is, making it a prime candidate for in-depth analysis using a spectroscope and other instruments that would provide additional information about the planet's atmosphere and composition. In addition to being the first extrasolar planet to have its cloud mapped, which revealed a bright spot on the planet, Kepler 7b is the smallest exoplanet ever discovered orbiting a star. It also displayed moon-like phases while orbiting its star, something scientists could only speculate about prior to this discovery. Number 2. 486f. Since Kepler 486f is in a habitable zone that contains the light elements hydrogen and helium but not the heavier ones like oxygen and carbon, and because no liquid water was detected on its surface, any water on the planet could be frozen or concentrated in a few places like deep lakes or hot springs. Kepler 186f is also a super-Earth, meaning that it is roughly 3.5 times the mass of the Earth, but orbits its star at only 1/3 the distance where liquid water could be stable. As a result, it remains a great candidate for in-depth analysis, using a spectroscope and other tools that would provide more information about the composition and atmosphere of this exoplanet. Third place, Kepler 438. B. Due to their rather tight orbit, which is just outside of the range where liquid water may be stable, this planet and its star are in a tidal lock, meaning that the same side of the planet constantly faces the star. Additionally, Kepler 438b is the closest exoplanet known to possess a magnetic field, increasing the likelihood that it will support life. If a planet with an atmosphere had carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and other volatiles like water vapor and methane, all essential components for life as we know it, the gravity would be 30 times that of Earth, making the surface conditions there comparatively more bearable. Kepler 438b's significantly older star, its proximity to the star, and the planet's meager exposure to X-ray and strong UV radiation are additional indicators that it is habitable. In many respects, Kepler 62f, Epler 62f, and Kepler 186f are very similar. They orbit in the so-called habitable zone, which means that they have a good chance of having liquid water on their surface. They also have very long years, which are nearly identical, meaning that life could eventually evolve slowly on both of these worlds. However, Kepler 62f is significantly colder than its counterpart, Kepler 186f. Furthermore, since this planet is outside of its star's habitable zone, it is unlikely to have liquid water on its surface. However, because it only has 1/6 of Earth's mass, it would have a small surface gravity, which means that liquid water could exist on its surface in shallow lakes or oceans after some geological process modification. If a planet like Kepler 62f had an atmosphere, it would probably contain carbon dioxide and other volatiles like water vapor and methane, which are essential components of life as we know it. Additionally, Kepler 62f is a super-Earth, meaning it has roughly 3 times the mass of Earth. Kepler 296f is another super-Earth planet found in the habitable zone of its star, but because it orbits just outside of it, it would experience some fairly intense and frequent flares from its parent star. Additionally, Kepler 296f is believed to have characteristics similar to those of the ice giants Uranus and Neptune in the solar system, albeit slightly smaller. It also has a high probability of having a large atmosphere due to its larger size, compared to Earth's, meaning that if it had an atmosphere, it would likely contain carbon dioxide and other volatiles like water vapor and methane, which are essential components of life as we know it. Notably, Kepler 296f shares certain characteristics with Earth. For example, it has approximately 290 days in a year, which is comparable to Earth. This is number 6. With its rather narrow orbit around its star, Kepler 22b is a planet that meets the criteria for being a rocky planet, what astronomers seek for when analyzing exoplanets. It is 600 light-years away from the star it orbits, which is roughly twice as far away and takes as long for Earth to orbit the Sun. Kepler 22b is also likely to be very similar to Jupiter in terms of mass and size, meaning that its surface gravity would be very high and therefore less suitable for life. It orbits squarely in the so-called habitable zone of its star, meaning that this exoplanet could have liquid water on its surface. Kepler 36b is number 7. This planet was found in 2009 by NASA's Kepler Telescope. It is very modest in mass, but else flawless. As far as the climate and rotational speed are concerned, it is Earth-like. It orbits a star that is comparable to the Sun, indicating that it is in its star's habitable zone and may have liquid water on its surface, which is essential for life as we know it. In addition to all of these variables, Kepler-36b's orbit is fairly unpredictable, which means that eventually the planet will probably shift out of the so-called habitable zone and become inhospitable. It may also exchange an atmosphere with the stellar wind. It takes 14 days for Kepler-36b to complete one orbit around its star, which is less time than it takes for Earth to orbit the Sun, Kepler-442b. Located in the star's habitable zone, this exoplanet may have liquid water on its surface. Additionally, Kepler-442b is thought to have an atmosphere similar to Earth's, with methane and carbon dioxide possibly present, two essential components for life as we know it. Number 9. Kepler-69b is not quite as Earth-like as some of the other planets on this list, but some characteristics still place it high on the list of potentially habitable exoplanets. This planet is a great candidate for additional analysis to determine whether or not it has an atmosphere and some sort of water on its surface. It is believed to be a rocky planet that is very similar to Earth in size and mass. It also orbits in a very tight orbit inside the star's so-called habitable zone, which means that it may have liquid water on its surface. Additionally, Kepler-69b is likely to have an atmosphere that is very similar to Earth's, with methane and carbon dioxide, two elements that are essential for life as we know it, possibly present. K22b is a small asteroid that orbits the star in a very close orbit. It may be very similar to the small rocky planets that are currently being found outside our solar system. Its orbit between the orbits of Mars and Earth and has a mass below 445 me. When the Kepler telescope first discovered this minor planet, number 11, HD 4307G, it was initially thought to be a transiting planet, hence the moniker TK7. With a mass and size comparable to Earth, this exoplanet is a prime candidate for additional research to ascertain whether or not it has an atmosphere and water on its surface. It orbits its star in a very tight orbit, which means that it may theoretically be nearly as Earth-like as some of the other exoplanets on the list. This exoplanet may have liquid water on its surface since it orbits squarely within its star's so-called habitable zone. All of these elements taken together placed HD 4307G at the top of the list of exoplanets that may be habitable, particularly since it is only 42 light-years away from Earth and its atmosphere is believed to be comparable to Earth's. As a result, another planet that may support life has been added to the list at number 12, K225b. This planet has a mass and size similar to Earth, making it a great candidate for further analysis to determine whether or not it has an atmosphere and some form of water on its surface. It orbits squarely in the so-called habitable zone of its star, which means that it could theoretically have liquid water on its surface. This planet orbits in a very tight orbit around its star, which means that it could theoretically be almost as Earth-like as some of the other exoplanets on the list. All of these elements work together to place K225b near the top of the list of exoplanets that may be habitable, especially given that it is only 147 light-years away from our star and orbits within 3.5 days of its host star, making it extremely close to its star in terms of distance. NASA's space telescopes are constantly searching for new planets, and each time one is found, there is hope that it might resemble Earth. While some of these planets are obviously better candidates than others, the possibility of discovering extraterrestrial life is now much greater than ever before because we can even find exoplanets in other solar systems. What do you believe, respected viewers, about the possibility of discovering extraterrestrial life in the coming centuries? I appreciate you joining me on this voyage of exploration. For more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, like, share, and comment.